on the phone today with Wester Worry. He is the Chief of Staff for the City of Rockford and Chair of the Regional Complete Count Committee. Hi, Wester.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to us about this, because despite what's happening in the world right now, the census is still going on.
Of course. Right.
And, there's so much involved in the census. And the fact that it happens every 10 years, there are a lot of people who maybe weren't old enough at the time of the last census to really understand what it is and why it's important. So tell us just exactly, what is the census?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's incredibly important now, and I appreciate the station doing this. There's so much going on right now in the world, but we need to keep things moving. And one of the most critical things that we can do right now is fill out our census. So the Constitution mandates that every 10 years we count everyone in the country. It's been going on since 1790, and every 10 years. The U.S. Census Bureau executes an incredibly complex and time-consuming effort to count everyone, and that's what we're right in the middle of right now. We've been communicating a lot about it, but things are really starting to ramp up right now.
So you mentioned it's every 10 years, and so I am 32. So when I was 22, I was still living with my parents, and honestly, all I remembered about the census, like you said, is it's every 10 years, it's counting the people. Okay. It's a lot more than that. There's a reason behind it. It's not just so when you drive by, you see how many people are in Rockford. Why is it so important?
That's a great way to put it. There is so much to census data that we probably don't think about. First and foremost, it's about representation, specifically in the U.S. House of Representatives. It helps apportion the number of representatives that each state gets. In Illinois, it's incredibly critical this year that in this census that we count everybody, because we want to minimize, we're probably going to lose one congressional representative in Congress, and we want to minimize that as much as we can. But in the broader picture, the census is also about federal funding. The federal government allocates about $675 billion with a B, billion dollars every year based on census data. And so when we count everyone, we make sure that we're getting our fair share of that federal funding.
So what is that money used for then? All that billions of dollars that is important from the census, what do we use it for?
Right, so it's really everything around us. It's everything from streets and roads and bridges and infrastructure to schools, to Head Start programs, to basic public services that we rely on from our federal government, from the state government, and then down to our local government. Also, when we talk about funding, the city in particular, City of Rockford, and other cities do this as well. We leverage local funds to get additional state and federal funds. One area is our capital infrastructure program, roads, streets, and bridges. We use a portion of local funding, and then we leverage that against state and federal funding, which ultimately is based on census data. So when we count everyone in our community, when we have a complete count, we make sure we're getting our share of that federal funding to provide the programs and services and infrastructure that we all rely on.
So some people might think the census, know that it's government related, but might actually think that it's only about the national government. But you're saying that it's exactly the opposite. It is so much more about right here where we are in the state line and the local government, right?
Exactly. So that data is also used to determine representation in our state government, and then ultimately down to things like county board and city council. So the data that we get from that, really, like I said earlier, it's intertwined in all of our lives. We don't even think about it. Real estate developers, companies use census data to determine where to put a factory, where to put a new business, where should I build a new subdivision or an apartment building. This is what regional, local, and national companies are using to determine how to grow and expand their businesses. So it's used everywhere, and really in areas that we don't even think about. Healthcare uses it to determine what kind of services that they need to provide. Where do they need to put clinics? Where do they need to put different facilities? It's used everywhere.
And a key piece of information that every time you're looking at the details about the census is that the information is not sold or shared. So while the numbers are shared, the amount of people, because that's so important, the information that you collect isn't shared, so no one should be afraid to fill it out, right?
Absolutely. The information by federal law is actually protected. The workers in the Census Bureau, they take an oath. They are subject to punishment if your census data is shared with anybody. On that same note, also by federal law, the Census Bureau cannot share your personal census information with other government agencies. So they cannot share that information with the State Department, Treasury, Defense, Immigration, ICE, Homeland Security. All that data that we give them stays within the Census Bureau, and it's all aggregated, obviously, but also the personal info that I submitted for me and my family over the weekend, that stays with the Census Bureau. It doesn't go anywhere.
So my final question is probably the most important question. How do we fill out the census, and where can we go for more information?
That's a great question. And so the easiest way to do it right now, people watching this have probably gotten their postcard invitations by now. If they haven't, it'll be showing up any day. That's really the first step. However, if you haven't gotten your postcard invitation and you want to go out and fill out the census online, you can do that. You can visit my2020census.gov, and that will take you right through the process. You don't need that postcard yet. It'll ask you a couple of extra questions if you don't have the postcard with the confirmation number, but it's a very simple process. For our family of 4, it took me about 6.5 minutes, and yes, I did time it. For people who don't have an easy smartphone or tablet access or a computer or PC, you can also fill it out with the regular paper questionnaire, and you can also do it by phone. So they make it as easy as possible. This is the first census that they're really encouraging people to go online.
Coming up next, we are going to get a look inside the Byron nuclear power plant for the first of a 3-part series during the refueling outage. You can catch up with any episode of Good Day Stateline you might have missed at gooddaystateline.com. We'll be right back.